So I'm down in Groton, Connecticut for a unit drill with the other members of the 54th, and I looked across the way from the fort to the museum, and I saw this. And, oh, heaven forbid, I couldn't resist the urge. I'm so sorry, everyone, but I just couldn't resist. There's, quite a few things a bit wrong about this, our Continental friend here. See, first things, well, I should probably get my glasses on, actually, to fully examine, so there's the irony for you. I will be a Farb while I am judging the Farb. First things first, the first thing that struck me about this, our friend, is that, well, he has something of a satchel here you can see on his right shoulder, which seems to be serving the purpose of his, being his cartridge box. However, looking at the way that he is wearing the thing, it will slide off of his shoulder very, very easily. The thing is, like, it's barely hanging on at all there on the gentleman's right shoulder. He runs at all. He has to stand under arms. He takes fire of any sort. That thing is going to slip right off, and, well, there goes all of his ammunition. There is a reason why military belting is worn in a cross-belt style like this, across either shoulder, and oftentimes fastened in the middle with the buckle there, so you're not losing it when you're actually, in a situation where you need the things. Otherwise, he does not have at all, at least not that we're able to see, a belt for his bayonet. Again, the belting should be a cross belt, although, given that he has his cartridge box over just one shoulder, it's possible, I suppose, he has a bayonet belt over the other shoulder, just hanging loosely along the side for some reason. Although, the lack of a bayonet is potentially justified in that he is a Continental soldier, and it's possible that he doesn't actually have one. So that's understandable. We can forgive that, most certainly. Let's go down a little bit. Look at his breeches there. He has buttons. You may not be able to see it from there, but if not, I'll put a photograph up. He has buttons, as you can see, going down the entire length of his breeches. They start at the knee and they carry up all the way up to the upper thigh. Whereas if you look at proper breeches, there's a few buttons on the very bottom to actually cinch the things down nice and tight around the knee, but there's only going to be 3 or 4 of them, or in this case, 5 of them, rather. 5 buttons, but this fellow has an awful lot of them, as if these are not actually breeches, they are just exceptionally long leg wraps of some sort, being buttoned around his legs, and not actually being pulled up as breeches, or later on trousers ought to be. Who knows, perhaps, the gentleman does, he's facing this way towards us, maybe a little bit further down. There's nothing actually covering anything up, and well, that would make this a very different kind of image than what we're seeing right now, wouldn't it? Decided to put the musket away. I realized that there's absolutely no reason for me to be carrying that while I'm gesturing to the thing and trying to hold onto a microphone in the other hand. But otherwise, let's move on to this gentleman's musket, which, first things first, impressive thing actually, it does have the brass bands here to carry a ramrod onto the piece. However, it does seem as though the gentleman has forgotten his ramrod. It's not actually included in the detail there, unless it's just very, very small. Given the style of painting, it's possible that we just can't see it, but I'm not seeing a ramrod, and I feel like we should be able to. Otherwise, something rather curious about the actual sort of tapering of the barrel here. It's tapering in a way. You see, we see the barrel very, very strong, very thick down there at the base, but then you raise up to the larger portion, and what? This is an empty stock. You can see the brass band there at the bottom, but there's no actual barrel on top of this musket. It sort of gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and then it just completely disappears by the time it reaches the top of the unit there. It's a very interesting style of design where the musket the barrel just sort of stops. It just sort of ends about, where the man's arm there is, theoretically, making it shooting the thing rather awkward, especially, of course, if the barrel's getting smaller and smaller as it goes up. That's not going to make things more accurate. It's just going to make the gun probably explode as you try to fire the shot out of an increasingly tightened gap there. Otherwise, if we were to trace down a little bit to the lock of the piece, which I don't know if you can see it at the moment, I'll put a picture right there, I think, but I'll gesture down here for my own ability to actually see the thing. Well, as far as the lock is concerned, it's a little warped. You see, first off, the cock of the piece does not have a flint inside of it. In fact, there's not even a place for the flint to be kept. It looks less like the cock of a firelock. It looks more like a lever of some sort, which is pulled back, but without an area to actually store to keep one's flint, well, you're not going to be able to fire the flintlock, now are you? Otherwise, as well, the steel is technically there. We see a little wisp of paint there to show off the steel. It is exceptionally tiny, though, and very thin, very frail. Looks to me not exactly appropriate to the task, so to say. The steel should be much more prominent, much larger. You know, that's a very solid piece of metal with the flint continually scraping off against it. You need that to be able to be strong and not fail, again, in a battle-type situation. Otherwise, I'm not actually seeing a pan on the piece for the powder to be kept, although given the style of the artwork here, I think that's understandable. We wouldn't expect to be able to see the pan so very clearly. Otherwise, the gentleman is wearing tall gaiters, which is a bit uncommon for Continental soldiers, although the actual fashion of the tall gaiters, for what they are, is actually quite authentic there. You can see they are distinctive from the boots or the shoes on the bottom of the man's feet, and then he has buttons going all the way up the top of the thing. That is good. It's just that those buttons ought not continue all the way up onto the breeches. That's where the problem comes in there. But otherwise, the gaiters are quite good on the gentleman. The soldier as well does have his coat here hanging very loosely open down the entire front, which of course is possible. You know, just because I have my coat cinched up with the little metal loops that are on the thing, doesn't mean that you necessarily have to have it done, although he is rather in a state of undress at the moment with his coat not closed at the top there. It looks very unsoldier-like, very slovenly as a result of that. And as well, it's worthy of note that his shirt here, he does have a stock, which is good. He does have a black neck stock, but his shirt is very, very flowing, as you see. It's very poofy, very, very fancy up there, almost like an officer's silken shirt, as opposed to a common enlisted man's linen, as we'd expect. And what's more is it carries all the way down. This man does not seem to be wearing a waistcoat. Normally, a waistcoat, of course, would help to keep all that material in, and it's a bit of a darker shade oftentimes. You can have a white waistcoat, but it can be a bit of a darker shade. But in any case, you can tell the material going, you know, one continuous piece. He's just wearing his shirt. There's no waistcoat. Again, a matter of him being in a state of undress. He's not properly dressed. Again, historically speaking, that is technically possible, and I'm sure that there were instances where it happened. But it is a state of undress, and as such, I will critique it as a sample of Farby in at least one sense of the word. And then finally, of course, if you look up at the top of the man's hat there, the brim of the thing has a wonderful sort of yellow golden lace. But I have to wonder how a mere enlisted man like this, a man who evidently cannot even afford a waistcoat, or indeed crossbelts for that matter, can somehow be entitled to an officer's cap with that golden lace. An enlisted man you can expect to have white lace. Sergeant or other NCOs have the silver lacing. Golden lace like that, it's only for very important people, which this man does not seem to be. Otherwise, those are all of the largest things I can find that are incorrect about the piece, because of course it matters a great deal. It matters a great deal. This is very important work that I'm doing, you must understand. Yes, indeed. Of course, until the next time, my dear viewers, I'm sorry. And until the next time, I am and I shall remain your most humble and obedient of servants.